All right, listen, this is episode 68. Listen, Happy New Year's to everybody. I'm stepping it up with the podcast. Listen, this is Mind Changes Podcast. Listen, the word of the day, the podcast in the car. So listen, this is episode 68, and the title of this episode is Counterpunch, right? Defeat the enemy with divine strategy. So it doesn't matter what you heard this New Year's Eve at church. If you don't have a strategy, it was just words in your ear. So let's jump into this exciting episode, right? Of the word of the day, right? 68, counterpunch, right? Defeat the enemy with divine strategy. So let's go. So no general goes to war without studying the battlefield. No boxer, step into the ring swinging wildly, right? And no believer survives spiritual warfare without strategy. So listen, y'all. I'm your host, Lamar Blakeney. So welcome to the Word of the Day, episode 68. And as we step into 2026, this is not the year of emotional reactions, right? This is not the year of spiritual precision. The enemy is not powerful. He is tactical. He doesn't rush. He studies. He waits for an opening, right? And the the tragedy is not that the enemy attacks. The tragedy is that many believers don't counter attack correctly. So spiritually, scripture tells us plainly, right? We are not ignorant of his devices. Second Corinthians 2:11, right? That means if we are defeated, it is not because Yahweh didn't equip us. It is because we don't use what he gave us, right? The Bible is not poetry alone. It is motivation alone. It is not motivation alone. It is an instruction manual for war. That's what it is. An instruction manual for war. So the enemy never starts with destruction. He starts with distractions. Remember, he doesn't start with destruction. He starts with distractions, right? So let's talk about a boxer. See, I've been fighting for a long time. I did some professional fighting as well. Just like a boxer, right? Satan to, he probes for weaknesses. He jabs with compromise. He feints with control, comfort. He studies your habits. He waits for emotional fatigue. See, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. That's John 10:10. So let's break it down. Let's notice the order of that. The first thing he does, he steals first, right? Your focus, your peace, and your discipline. Then the second part, he kills, right? Which is next, your hope, your faith, your relationships, and then he destroys, which is last, your purpose. He doesn't knock you out with one punch. That's not what he does. He don't knock you out with one punch. He wears you down round for round. That's what the enemy does. So let's go into my first segment. I don't even have my Bible. Yes, I do. I got my Bible right here. First segment is don't rush, discern. People, don't rush into battle with the enemy, discern, right? Jesus, Yahushua, never reacted emotionally to Satan. He never did. So in the wilderness, Satan tempted him 3 times. And Jesus, first of all, he never argued. He didn't panic or improvise. It is written. That's what he always came back with. It is written, Matthew 4, right? Jesus didn't throw random punches. He waited for the setup, then delivered precise scripture, right? So spiritual warfare is not volume, it's accuracy. It's not volume, it is accuracy. And let's talk about some biblical weapons, right? Let's talk about some biblical strategies, right? This is my second segment. Let's talk about biblical strategies. Weapons are not physical. I want y'all to know that. Weapons are not physical. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God, through the pulling down of strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:4, right? You don't fight spiritual battles with anger. You don't fight it with ego. You don't fight it with social media arguments. You don't fight it with emotional reactions. Remember, one of my last podcasts says, a godly response will give you a godly outcome, but an ungodly response will produce unpredictable outcomes, right? So you fight with truth. We supposed to fight with discipline, patience, obedience, and sometimes the greatest weapon we can use is silence when needed. See, David did not rush at Goliath. He measured him. He didn't rush at Goliath. He measured him. One stone, one sling, one strike. And we got to be strategic just like that, because accuracy beats aggression every time. If you're accurate, it beats aggression every time. So let's talk about, I'm going to point 3, right? Let's talk about, not point 3. Let's go to segment 3, which I'm going to call, which is a biblical strategy. Timing is a weapon, everybody. Remember this. Timing is a weapon. To everything, there is a season. Ecclesiastes 3:1. See, many of us as believers lose battles not because we lack faith, but because we swing too early. We swing too early. See, and I fought mixed martial arts. See, a boxer waits for the opening. A soldier waits for the signal. And a believer is supposed to wait on Yahweh. See, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Isaiah 40:31. See, let me tell y'all, waiting is not weakness. Waiting is loading the punch. Waiting is loading the punch. That's what waiting is, right? So let's talk about I got my notes over there. Let's talk about historical fights, right? Insights, right? Let's talk about some historical insights, right? Roman soldiers didn't win because of brute strength. They won because of formation, right? The shield, the shield wall worked only when soldiers stayed disciplined and connected. You hear that? That's why scripture says this, and I want y'all to pay attention. This is why scripture says this: put on the full armor of God. It says put on the full armor of God, Ephesians 6. See, no part of it, not the piece you like, all of it. Not part of it, not the piece you like, all of it. You can't go out half equipped. You cannot. So we have to learn how to counterpunch spiritually. We have to learn this in 2026, right? See, the enemy wants you emotional. Yahweh wants you positioned. The enemy wants you emotional. Yahweh wants you positioned. See, the enemy throws chaos. You got to respond. We have to respond with order, right? The enemy throws fear. We have to respond with faith. The enemy throws delay. We have to respond with endurance. See, we can't beat him by swinging harder. We can only beat him by swinging smarter. That's right. We got to swing smarter in this season. So, I wanted to come up here and give y'all something for 2025. And I believe this. The devil is strategic, but God is the architect, right? A believer with patience is more dangerous than the enemy with power. You heard me? I'm going to say it again. A believer with patience is more dangerous than an enemy with power. See, emotions react, wisdom counters. You heard me? Emotions react, wisdom counters. That's that punch. That's that punch you need, right? So let's talk about some strategies that we can use daily. I'm talking to you and me too, right? First of all, we got to know the word. Ignorance creates openings, right? We got to control our emotions. Discipline is the armor of God. And we got to stay alert, people. Fatigue is when attacks come. And then we have to move with timing. Don't rush God's hand. Don't ever rush God's hand. And my last thing is stay connected. See, isolation is the enemy's favorite tactic. Isolation is the enemy's favorite tactic. So as we step into 2026, hear this clearly from Elder Lamar Blakeney. Hear this clearly. We are not created to survive attacks. We were not created to survive attacks. We were created to outmaneuver them. I had to think about how I wanted to say it, right? See, the enemy studies us, but Yahweh designed us. And when we stop reacting and start strategizing, we won't just withstand the fight, we will win it. We will win it in this season. So listen, people, stay disciplined. First thing, stay patient. Stay armored. Because the next punch belongs to us. The next punch belongs to us. So listen, no matter what you think of me or who you believe I represent, I am Elder Lamar Blakeney. This is the podcast. I hit the mute button. This is the Mind Changers podcast, which I call the podcast in the car, the word of the day, episode 68. And listen, I want y'all to stay true. I want y'all to stay connected to God. And remember, counterpunch, defeating the enemy with strategy. This was episode 68. And I'm Elder Lamar Blakeney. And welcome to Mind Changers podcast and the word of the day. Podcast in the car, people. Peace. Grace and peace.